The U.S. women lost a game. Is it time to freak out? Why is American soccer so scared of their leagues failing? And who did we miss in our USL D1 cities list? That and more on Friday's Morning Kickaround. Hello and welcome to the show. This is Morning Kickaround, where we cover the world's favorite game from the world's favorite country, coming to you live each Wednesday, Monday, and Friday morning. I'm Robert. He's Jason. Proud to be hosting a show in the four figures of YouTube subscribers. Congratulations to us at Confetti Explosion. How you feeling, Mr. Davis?
Doing okay. It's Friday. We made it. We're here, and there's some bad stuff with the U.S. women losing a game. Oh, we're very sad about that. And there's some interesting stuff. Oh, and Christian Pulisic too. That's going to come up. And I know we've made some waves in the USL lower division soccer community in America with this show and some of the things we talked about. And I'm looking forward to diving back into those topics today.
All great topics. Going to be a great show, but I kind of have to pump the brakes and bring up the most important conversation of the day, the naming of the Morning Kickaround Rooster. We've been getting some really fun name submissions. We wake up and start the show every day with our rooster cawing the beginning of Morning Kickaround. And so some of the, we are actually going to do it. We've talked about it. We're going to put a poll up on the socials. So YouTube community section, X, and the Blue Sky. We'll put it up over the weekend. We'll return to it next week. The name of the Morning Kickaround Rooster final nominees. You ready for these?
Yes. Let's go.
Selection A, Peck Shea. B, David Peckham. Our third choice, Marco Rooster, or the fourth, Chick-fil-A. Oh, and then also there was a
I think
notable mention,
wrong.
Friends Peckenpower.
You got it so wrong, Robert. We were talking before the show. Chick-fil-A wasn't going to make the cut. It was going to be Friends Peckenpower, and you switched them. What happened?
Oh man, somewhere in the copy and paste, I didn't. I guess maybe Chick-fil-A. Anyone, Pelé is hard to drop. It's hard to drop a Pelé off your squad. But so the four nominees, Peck Shea, David Peckham, Marco Rooster, and Friends Peckenpower here to name our Morning Kickaround Rooster. We are past our goal of 1,000 subscribers, but it's just the beginning. We are going to keep on going, be the very next to subscribe Morning Kickaround on YouTube. Keep this thing going. Let's continue to grow the MK Ultra community. And then follow along on social media at mkickaround on X, Instagram, Blue Sky. Write us a note, morningkickaround@gmail.com. Support us with some dollars. Ko-fi.com/morningkickaround. Thank you to all those who have followed us on there and donated some money. Very grateful for that. And if anyone else who hasn't done so wants to do that, you can do a one-time donation or make a regularly scheduled donation. Anything will help, continue and help us build the show. Without further ado, should we move into today's topics? Let's start Friday's long balls here at Morning Kickaround. All right, long balls here for Friday, February 28th, the last day of February. My name's Robert. He's Jason Davis. We are less than 48 hours after a United States women's national team loss. Can you believe it? It doesn't happen very often. I think it's been exactly a calendar year since Emma Hayes' side lost the game. 2-1 defeat at the feet of Japan. Is this a time for the fan base to freak out or kind of tip your hat to a really good Japanese side?
I think we should panic. I think we should all go running into the streets, screaming and yelling and lighting things on fire because the U.S. women lost the game. No, the context here matters. It's so weird. I don't want the U.S. women to ever lose a game. And I have a I have a very elitist mindset when it comes to our women's national team. We're supposed to be the best all the time, no matter what. There should be no. Obviously, we had a World Cup that didn't go the way we wanted it to, but then we won a gold medal. We were back on top, and it's like, no one could beat. And then, of course, this is not. This is a process. This is not a finished product for Emma Hayes. She's working towards 2027. There were a number of players in this team who are either very young or had very few caps or both. And, Japan's good. Like that's the thing we should also remember. Japan is a very good soccer team. They are extremely technical. They have played together for a long time. Emma said it in her post-game comments that they have a core of veteran players who know each other and know how to play together. And to lose to them, there is no shame. But that also makes it feel like I'm saying it's okay we lost, or I'm accepting losing. And I don't accept losing, Robert, especially not in our tournament on home soil. First time ever that the U.S. women have lost a She Believes Cup. That stinks.
It's pretty wild that, one thing that's encouraging, they lost the game, but that means they're on the cusp of a brand new winning streak. I mean, these losses don't come around very often. So the motivation, Emma Hayes probably won't let this sort of thing happen again, you'd feel. But the game itself, I tuned in a couple minutes after kickoff, and the Americans were already losing. Japan just absolutely stormed them at the beginning. The Americans hadn't found their foothold in the game at all, but I was impressed. They did kind of work through it and did work themselves back into the game. Found the equalizer, which was a good goal, and then the pendulum swung back again towards Japan before halftime. And so at halftime, you're like, wow, this is an incredible game. Any game that has the pendulum shifts, like Japan up early, about 20 minutes, 25 minutes of the American women, really, putting their, dictation to the game. Japan coming back before half. Emma Hayes, though, the one note, Emma Hayes' change at halftime didn't work, because the second half, Americans didn't really ever get their foot on the ball and put their stamp of authority on it at all. There was two halftime substitutions made. Crystal Dunn came out, Ali Sentnor came out. I'm trying to remember who came in at halftime, but it didn't have the desired effects, because the United States women's national team didn't really convince, or didn't really look like they were going to be the better team there in the second half against Japan.
Yeah, I mean, that's the problem. Like, how do you judge the progress here? I mean, again, we're 2 years away from a World Cup, 2+ years away from a World Cup. So should there be any panic over what the team looks like right now? Go ahead.
I was just going to add an additional note. The players that came in at halftime were Neiswanger and Jaden Shaw.
Yes,
Sentnor
right.
and Dunn.
Yeah, and there are several players in there that you figure might not be World Cup players, but they need to be getting a look now. I'm not saying I know which players those are, right? I'm not even sure that Emma Hayes knows which players those are yet. And again, you talk about the youth. You talk about Alyssa Thompson, who maybe didn't look all that great in that game. You talk about Lily Johannes, who is still a teenager. We are excited for their potential, but they are very young, and we're not going to throw the baby out with the bathwater and say, well, they lost to Japan in a She Believes Cup final, essentially, and we can't have them. They're not good enough. That'd be a terrible mentality. And so it is up to Emma, who very much took a win at all cost kind of mentality at the Olympics, right? Like, what if you were paying close attention to the Olympic campaign, you know that was not sort of the full expression of Emma Hayes' football. That was just, let's get this done. Let's find a way to grind out results and win games and take a gold medal home. There's going to be some pain, some suffering between that and a World Cup in 2027 when they want to be a more cohesive unit and haven't introduced a bunch of new players, because obviously that Olympics kind of represented a last hurrah for a number of players, or the last big opportunity to win something for some players who may be replaced going into 2027.
I'm glad to see Emma Hayes, bringing in more players, and a loss now in the She Believes Cup is nothing compared to those future big tournaments that you're talking about in a couple of years. And her predecessor didn't transition well from aging players to the new generation, which led to his dismissal and Emma Hayes' introduction. You talked about Lily Johannes. She showed on Wednesday against Japan exactly what she was, really.
Yeah.
When she got on the ball, she was really silky smooth. Obviously, great technical ability, great presence in the midfield, great passing. But also, at the same time, she looked like a kid at times. Like she got crowded out. Japan just swarmed to the ball. There were some moments where no American player had any sort of moment on the ball, which kind of maybe the formula to get at this team. I don't know if many teams can sustain that sort of energy and pressure on the ball like Japan did, which was really impressive. But Johannes kind of got kind of crowded out of the game in the second half. She didn't really get the opportunity to get on the ball, look up, and pick out a good pass like she did in the first half. But obviously, really exciting. I can't wait to see more of her in an American shirt.
Yeah, it's a process. So let's all just calm down. We're not running in the streets. We're not lighting things on fire. We're not calling for Emma Hayes to be dumped, right? We put faith in her. Again, she delivered a gold medal, which is a major tournament victory for the U.S. women, showing that the talent is at least there to get the job done in certain ways. But again, if we want this team to be closer to their rivals like Spain, like England, like the Netherlands, like Germany, etc., then there's going to be some growing pains. And I think, there is a technical level coming through with young players in the U.S. women's program that should allow us to play a football, a soccer that is capable of sticking with a Spain or a Japan, for that matter, later in the future.
They are back in action. The United States women's national team return with a pair of friendlies against Brazil in about 5 weeks' time in the first week of April. So not too much time to wait until the return to action for the women. Long ball number 2 here on Friday, February 28th. Unfortunately, not another good news. Christian Pulisic playing time alert. Should fans be concerned about João Felix taking his 10 spot? Yesterday, he didn't play. Felix got that. Felix got the start. Pulisic first sub off the bench, coming in the 60th minute, but the result not good. Milan lose again. They are like 7th or 8th now. The Champions League hopes are getting thinner and thinner. Where's your alarm rating for Christian Pulisic's situation at Milan? I know we weren't worried at first, but there seems to be a theme, a trend with the team selection at Milan.
Yeah, the last month has not been very good for Christian Pulisic. And it's funny because he came back from injury, right?
Yeah.
And played in that Supercopa that they did down in Saudi Arabia.
He looked good.
And yeah, Conceição had just arrived. He scored, I believe, to help them beat, was it Inter that they beat in the final?
Yep.
It was a Milan derby outside of Milan, which was weird. And it looked like that was just going to be like him getting back to the success he had previously had before the small injury issue, and we weren't going to have to worry. We could all calm down, and Christian Pulisic is going to be fine. And then João Felix comes in, and Conceição turns to Felix to fill that central creator role that Pulisic had occasionally played, had played on a fairly regular basis. I mean, there was some movement around that front four. Chukwueze was getting some time and things like that. So I think this is an issue of a new manager, being enamored with a new player. And João Felix has a magic about him. He has an ability to deceive. He is a deceiver, João Felix.
Yeah, we're talking about Mount Rushmore of overrated players.
He looks like a player who should be doing things, and then he doesn't deliver. But he is very easy to fall in love with, I think, for managers. It's why he keeps getting big moves. It's why he's been at Barcelona, he's been at Chelsea, he's been at Milan. Obviously, since it didn't really work at Atleti when they paid 100 million euros for him. And I at the risk of sounding like an aggrieved American soccer fan who's pissed off on behalf of my American soccer hero, certainly Christian Pulisic, a major part of the U.S. men's national team, our best attacking player. It does seem ridiculous that it continues to be João Felix without any end product when Pulisic was extremely effective and delivered during his time at Milan prior to Conceição arriving. I'm hoping that something turns here. Maybe there is a sense of Pulisic needs a little bit of a break, and João Felix coming in helps them rest Pulisic. But losing to Bologna, which is really not, Bologna's a decent side. So he had a great year last year and have had to adjust without Thiago Motta this season. But losing to Bologna just means it makes it that much more difficult to climb the table and get back into a Champions League spot, which is, by the estimation of Milan fans, is their divine right. At the very least, they should be a Champions League club, even if they're not challenging for a Scudetto, and they are well off that pace. And as we've talked about before, and I don't think I'm being alarmist when I say this, when we get to a moment like this at a club with an American who's playing a significant role, what tends to happen is, it's the American's fault. Now, he's not on the field to be a problem as much. Obviously, played half an hour against Bologna, but didn't play the first hour. You can't really blame Pulisic if he's not getting the starts. But if he's become the scapegoat already, and there was that rumor of a bit of a contretemps between him.
Yeah, he had to make a statement like, I didn't have a bust up with the coach, right?
Yeah, that's never good. Like, you never want that to be entering the chat, that issue. So I'm my alarm level on a scale of 1 to 5 is about a 3.5. I'm not there to be like, oh my God, he's got to get out of there. But I am watching closely. Like, the storm is developing, right? It's not exactly a storm yet. It's not exactly, gale force winds or anything. We're not battening down any hatches, but all of the atmospheric conditions are ripe for the storm to start.
That ozone layer smell is in the air. The quote unquote calm before the storm. The loss to Bologna leaves Milan in 8th place, 8 points out of the Champions League spots, and hopes of the Champions League berth becoming a bit stark. Something to keep note on for just general soccer fans. Serie A title race is going to be one to watch here in the last couple months of the season. Well, 3 teams within 3 points of each other. Inter on 57, Napoli on 56, and Atalanta on 54. So that'll be a fun watch.
Yeah, the Serie A title race is worth watching, whereas the Bundesliga is over. The Premier League looks to be over. The French league is over. Spain is also incredibly interesting right now. But yes, Italy is one of those leagues that if you are like, the Premier League, Liverpool is going to win this thing, then go keep an eye on what's happening with those 3 teams you just talked about.
What a difference a week makes. I was pretty nervous about Liverpool after the Aston Villa draw, and then with everything that's happened, I'm feeling a lot more comfortable. And
now you're feeling good. After we declared it over, I did, and you were like, whatever. And then no. Go ahead.
All right. Well, it's usually the chasing pack, the Manchester City, I guess. Any sort of break in the armor, any sort of draw felt like a disaster in years past for like the last 7 years. So any sort of drop points got me pretty nervous when you consider history. But the chasing pack not as strong this year. Moving on to long ball number 3 here on Friday morning. Let's pick our MLS Fab 4 to watch here on match week 2 for Major League Soccer. Full slate of games. It was a pretty entertaining. I mean, quality, was high ceiling, low floor, I would say, for match week 1. Some fun stuff, some playing and out of the back issues across the board. But let's circle 2 games each that we want to look at, with there being 30 teams. A whole lot of games to keep an eye on, but what would you say was your? Let's start with 1. What would be your number 1 pick of
That's
the
a good question. Keeping an eye on, we've got is, and it's early, right? But what we've got is sort of a lot of matchups of a team that looks pretty good against a team that maybe hasn't looked good or didn't in week 1, or in some cases with CONCACAF Champions Cup. There's something to that too, right? RSL gets bounced by Herediano. By the way, congratulations to the Whitecaps who got past their Costa Rican opposition and will move forward. I'm going to circle first and foremost, and there's a couple reasons why. Philly hosting Cincinnati. You've got the incestuous nature of the coaching staffs in the past. Obviously, that's changed with Bradley Carnell coming in after Jim Curtin was let go last season. But this is, Pat Noonan. Maybe Pat Noonan looks at this as an opportunity to go avenge his friend Jim Curtin and take down the Union in Philadelphia or in Chester. Probably not that. It probably just wants to win the game because that's good for your chances to do something. Cincinnati is definitely high on a lot of people's lists to achieve things this season. Kevin Denke has looked excellent already. I mean, scoring goals in multiple competitions with the opener and now and the Champions League as well. They beat the Red Bulls last week 1-0. I think it's going to be one of those seasons where Cincinnati wins a lot of games 1-0. Obviously, Philly scored goals against Orlando in their first match, so I'm picking that as number one.
I feel like that might be an aberration scoring all those goals, but a great opening weekend for Philly. My number one, Saturday, early afternoon, we talked to a fan about the Charlotte soccer scene. I suggest you check that video out, Morning Kickaround on YouTube. Subscribe and watch that video about the Charlotte soccer scene. But it's their home opener, and they are welcoming Atlanta. Atlanta was very exciting, thrilling, got a 3-2 win in their opening weekend at home, but they travel and visit Charlotte on their opening weekend. We didn't see Wilfred Zaha last week. I'm not sure if he's going to be in or not, but I think Charlotte at home versus the reinvigorated Atlanta would be a great way to start your MLS Saturday afternoon.
Okay, I mean that's that is interesting because obviously there's national team fans are keeping an eye on Najamang and trying to see if his development can get us to the place of getting excited about his potential to play for the U.S. men's national team. Yeah, I mean, who's not looking at Atlanta and thinking, okay, the leap is going to happen. Obviously, last year finishing ninth, but doing the business in the playoffs that they did against Inter Miami. They gave up 2 goals to Montreal, who I think is probably going to be better than I expected them to be. I think they had them down at the bottom of the East. Early return suggests maybe I was underrating Montreal a bit, but this could be the season for Atlanta. It could be a lot of 3-2s. I just said Cincinnati's going to win a lot of 1-0s, 1-0s. Atlanta could win a lot of 3-2. So this is an interesting pick. And again, the Charlotte difficult opener. It's like, how do you judge Charlotte? And there was a mistake at the back that gifted them a goal. And so it's not clear if they really earned that 2-2 against Seattle, but to get a point away in the Pacific Northwest, other side of the country in your first week of the season, credit Charlotte. Keep an eye on them. I like that one. All right, my turn again? I got to go back?
Yeah, why don't you go? What's your number 2 in your, so the third entry in our Fab 4 for the weekend?
Okay, so we're talking, we're talking MLS Match Day 2, so early, trying to figure out who's good, who's worth watching. This is entertainment value, right? I'm looking for something I can pick out here that's got like extra levels of maybe good soccer or goals, but perhaps also could be wild and crazy and chaotic. That's one of the things I like about Major League Soccer. Man, how about San Diego, St. Louis? San Diego, first ever game. They beat the defending champion, LA Galaxy. Now they get a chance to open up their campaign at home, right? This is their first ever home game at Snapdragon Stadium. They play tomorrow night late. It'll be late for me. I'm not sure if I'm staying up for it. Maybe I'll catch the highlights. I don't know. And then St. Louis, new coach Olaf Melberg. They had that draw with Colorado. They didn't score any goals, so there's some pressure to go score goals, particularly against an expansion team. Just saying. I think I like that matchup with some narratives underneath it.
That's interesting, and that's a late one, but turning to, I'm sorry to not have much of a counterpoint to that pick. That seems sound. No. San Diego, fair enough.
I mean, it's just it's always fun to see a team debut at home, right? A new expansion team.
Yeah.
Right. Charlotte had the 70,000 the Galaxy were visiting. It was this huge thing, this huge event. I remember when St. Louis opened up that building and had this incredible atmosphere, and people talked about that immediately. What is Snapdragon going to deliver for San Diego FC? right? What's the vibe going to be like? Is it going to be intense, or is it going to be sort of a more of a laid back California style of support? I mean, the Wave have had really good support in San Diego.
Yeah.
What does that look like for the men's side?
Yeah, that would be interesting. I guess it kind of slipped my mind that San Diego game was actually a road game because the celebrations were so jubilant after they scored. It actually kind of like slipped my mind that actually wasn't a home game. So that's definitely a good one to circle. First home game for San Diego. My second choice to round out our Fab Four for match day 2 would be a matchup between two teams kind of having opposite starts to their season. We're going to go out west. Real Salt Lake taking on the Seattle Sounders. Okay. And so the season for this is a little bit more narrative. So I'm not sure if it may not have the wow entertainment factor, but I think for narrative's sake, it could be the most interesting game. It's coming on at the 4:30 time slot on Saturday afternoon. And for those not paying attention yet, Real Salt Lake has not started well at all. They've lost their CONCACAF Champions Cup, and they got beat 4-0 in match day 1. So things not going well for the folks in Real Salt Lake, whereas Seattle Sounders, the start of their 2025 campaign couldn't have gone any better. They won against Guatemala and CONCACAF Champions Cup. I suppose it could have gone better. They only got a draw on match day 1, so there could have been a step farther there. But all arrows seem to be pointing up for Seattle here in the early goings of the season, while they kind of look like they're pointing down a little bit for Salt Lake.
Yeah, I mean, who knows what Salt Lake always finds a way to compete. And is this a step back for them this season? Obviously, we're trying to replace Chito Arango, and they doing that is extremely difficult. And I know that they're supposed to be in the market looking for options. Apparently, per Tom Bogert, they kicked the tires on Brian White from Vancouver, on Willie Agata from Sporting Kansas City. I think there was one or two names, other MLS names that maybe they were interested in. They may have to look outside the league to sign somebody, but they desperately need a center forward. And we're going to see, if Pablo can find ways to score at all against one of the best defensive teams from 2024 in the Seattle Sounders. And the Sounders on the other side, one X factor for them, because right, Jordan Morris, Christian Roldan, you go out and you get Jesus Ferreira, you go get Paul Arriola, both of whom are looking good in the CONCACAF Champions Cup. But the X factor is whether or not Pedro de la Vega actually delivers on some of the promise when they brought him in, when they bought him. Injuries, lack of effective play, just wasn't very good last season. And it looks like, and it's early, but again, how do you judge the CONCACAF Champions Cup and that performance? But it looks like De La Vega is in a different place. And if he starts giving them goal contributions, when they have returned basically all of their goal contributions from 2024 and added Jesus Ferreira and Paul Arriola, this is why I'm extremely high on the Seattle Sounders. I picked them to win the Supporter Shield, and I think we're seeing already the reasons why they could be a force this season.
Looking into the chat of what MK Ultras are excited for this weekend. Our guy Mike Thomas looking at the SKC versus San Jose. The Bruce Project started off with a bang. How many 4-0 wins did they have last year? Probably not too many. So Earthquakes fans probably very excited about the start there.
Yeah, and I would say that on the other side, Sporting Kansas City needs to win relatively soon, or the pressure is only going to intensify. Peter Vermes is the furniture in Kansas City at this point, but eventually they may have to look real hard at this and say, well, maybe we've got to get a divorce because it's just not working out. You can only live on credit for so long before the returns have to show up. Now, I know Sporting has had some major change. You could argue they're in a rebuilding phase, and I guess that buys Peter Vermes some extra leeway. They brought in Mike Burns to do the roster building job because Peter was doing both for so long. I don't know, though. Like, Sporting did not look good in the loss to Austin. They need to win. I don't know if San Jose, I mean, they're at home, right? And based on San Jose's season last year, that's going to feel like not a must win, but a must show better for Sporting Kansas City.
One last comment from the chat on this topic. Simply Dope. He expects Charlotte to win on his birthday. That would be a nice present. So happy birthday to you tomorrow, Mr. Dope. That would, I'm sure, put the icing on top of your day. Thanks for tuning in, guys. We crashed past the 1,000 subscriber mark. Let's keep it going. What should our next goal be? Should it be 2,500 or go big and go 5K?
I mean, we got goal. Our goals is to get a more subscribers every single day. That's the goal. Do I like round numbers? Yes, of course I like round numbers. We're past 1,000. 2,000 would be 2,000 in by next week. Why not? I know, again, we're covering all kinds of stuff here on Morning Kick Around. We're a general show, but I know the USL community has responded well to what we've been doing with covering some stories there. So tell people about what we're doing. We're looking to bring in guests on a regular basis. How about this for a tease? Not only can you vote on the name of our Soccer Morning Rooster, but how about this for a tease? We're putting together a feature, a series, bringing in some of the more controversial figures. I don't know what the right word is. People who are trying to rock the American soccer boat. You may know of them from their online presence in some cases. In other cases, they'll be maybe more executive type figures. I think we could even throw Peter Wilt into that category, although we didn't label him a soccer disruptor. That's what we got coming. I'm excited for that. So look forward to that. And subscribe so you don't miss those.
Yeah, the poll's going to go up sometime this afternoon, naming the Rooster Peck Shea, David Peckham, Marco Rooster, or Franz Peckenpower. The options.
Peckenpower.
Yes. That's a strong one. Very powerful, if you will. Like and subscribe to the channel. Follow us on social media at mkickaround on all the major ones you see there on your screen. You can write us an email. We've been getting some nice ones. I don't know if you've checked the email, but some nice notes for us to respond to at morningkickaround@gmail.com. Or throw us a couple dollars, ko-fi.com/morningkickaround. And we're going to take a breath for just a second. We're going to come back and maybe slip down the memory hole of American soccer. Keep it tuned right there. Morning Kick Around. All right, the memory hole here on Morning Kick Around. Why so much fear about failed American leagues, Jason? The news of the USL planning a competing D1 league in the near future has stirred up the conversation of just how the structure of American soccer is. Why is it the way it is? A lot of people thinking, how did we get here? And we've been talking a lot about PLS rules and trying not to replicate the failures of past. And there was a period that, in my memory, I was a little bit murky on. The NASL was not the only ever previous American soccer league, as some have in their mind. There was a series of failures that led to that. And I've come across a video that does a pretty good job of articulating kind of like after the 1966 World Cup and prior to NASL, there was a bit of a wild west of American soccer of investors thinking they found kind of a pot of gold in the American soccer market. And so we're kind of going to watch along with that and kind of see if we can get some clarity of why the Pro League standards kind of came about.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people. So, my guess is that a lot of our viewers, all the MK Ultras who are partaking of their show today and have been paying attention, especially as we talk about USL launching a First Division league or planning to, probably know some of this, right? You know about the recent lawsuit between the NASL and US Soccer. NASL 2.0, we're pointing out, not the same as the original NASL, obviously, but they use that name. You probably know about things like the ASL, going back to like the 1920s when baseball owners started soccer clubs in the Northeast, and then there was a fight, as there always is, a soccer war, and those leagues collapsed. But in the 60s, this is sort of ahead of the birth of the original NASL, there was a little bit of who's going to step into the breach, who's going to take this on. And you have found this video, I believe it's called From Root None, on YouTube, so shout out to them. But let's watch a little bit of this and see if we can get some of the history to kind of fill in our gaps.
United States Soccer Football Association in 1945. The USSFA, which remarkably at the time consisted of just 2 members of staff, would have no doubt been overwhelmed with the amount of attention that they were suddenly receiving. The tiny association had the mammoth responsibility of deciding what the future of US soccer would be. You see, being sanctioned by the USSFA would not only bring credibility from FIFA, but also allow the league to operate within the global transfer system in the quote-unquote proper manner, something that was still a little bit sensitive given what happened 40 years earlier.
I want to point out here, as I pause this, that so much of what was going on then is very similar to what has been happening in American soccer, since. I mean, and it's not any different. I mean, we may think of this as sort of like, modern corporate ideas of how to run things, and business is first, and it's all about money, and it's just they were doing this in the 60s. I mean, none of this was for the love of the game, and it was all born, Robert, of we don't have a league, we don't have existing clubs, right? So if you think about the way English football developed, and then it's happened spread across Europe and around the world, is a bunch of people got together and said, we're going to make a club. We want to play some soccer. And then they went, well, we want to play somebody else besides ourselves. And then, there's a club down the road. Oh, well, now we've got 10 of these and 12 of these and 20 of these. And, maybe we can form a league and maybe we all get together. But it's those people were always thinking about their club and then joining up to play games. This is all top down. This is all league first, right? The whole idea is let's start a league and then we go populate with teams. And it flips the dynamic in a way that I think is pretty, not destructive. I don't think that's the right way to think about it, but it certainly isn't ideal if you're a purist. Do you know what I'm saying?
Profit and product driven rather than the game itself and rising up. And these three organizations in red highlighted, these organizations came about to be the league only because they saw the rating success of the World Cup and the movie of the World Cup. So they just saw a little dollar sign, and now they're trying to jump into that pool.
100%. The history of American soccer is the history of capitalism. You go all the way back to the ASL and the leagues in the Northeast in the 20s. Those were just baseball owners trying to make more money by filling up their stadiums when they weren't playing baseball, right? It whatever. And then that's obviously the NASL era comes around with Lamar Hunt, and a lot of that was about football owners trying to capitalize and fill up their stadiums when they weren't playing football. And that's kind of true now with MLS. How much of MLS is backed by NFL ownership? All right, let's continue. See if we get a little more history.
The USSFA and FIFA knew that 3 sanctioned football leagues launching would destroy any chance that soccer had in the United States. So their initial solution was to ask the 3 prospective leagues to merge into one mega league. However, the reply they got from each of the delegates was a big fat no. So,
that's
suddenly
also
realizing that they were dealing with
doing
businessmen, decided to talk in terms that they'd understand. In exchange for certification, the USSFA demanded 10% of any television deals, 4% of ticket sales, as well as a flat $25,000 franchise fee from each of the sanctioned
franchise fees, eh?
Yeah. So this is the thing, right? I don't even know how to judge this, right? The U.S. So at this point, the USSFA, which obviously has changed names, is now known as U.S. Soccer. It wasn't anything, right? They had no real power, and there wasn't even really a deep well of sort of amateur soccer happening. I mean, I know there was amateur soccer, but so much of it was sort of outside the purview of any organization. Even youth soccer wasn't really a thing. If you find somebody, like I know our current president played a little bit of soccer. Like you find somebody who played soccer in the 60s and 70s, I mean, they were unicorns. It wasn't a thing, not really, not the way that we think about it now. What do you think about this, Rob? That back then, what is now U.S. Soccer, very small organization, very limited power, was like, hey, we'll sanction you, but you got to give us this cut. You got to pay us.
Yeah, they probably didn't have a lot of leverage at all. I mean, these investor guys are probably, we'll see in the video as it continues, they're probably like, well, why should we listen to you 2 guys sitting in an office? And,
right.
And there wasn't any public outroar if, they went against the rules or anything. There's a couple pockets probably of ethnic groups have their own leagues in certain pockets across the country, but there is no groundswell. There's no soccer conversation at large here at all. So we'll see.
It obviously mentions tying into FIFA and then tying into the transfer or the world market. Let's not call it a transfer market because transfers weren't really happening the way that they are now. Again, you have to go back in time and think about this is before Bosman. This is before the reason the NASL was different, and I imagine that we'll get to that. if we watch the entire video. But the reason the NASL, the 1.0 was different when they were getting Cruyff and they were getting Eusebio and they were getting some of these other famous European-based players is that they were outside the system. So the rules that applied to moving around in Europe did not apply to an American league, and so they could do things like this. Let's keep going.
League's clubs. Cox, Herman and Milan almost fell off their metaphorical chairs at the figures thrown at them and refused to pay the extortionate fees put forward by the USSFA. Jack Kent Cook and his North American Soccer League saw the space open up for a tap-in and agreed to the USSFA's demands, and so, on the 19th of November 1966, the NASL was sanctioned as the Premier League of American soccer. To avoid any naming confusion with the other failed bids, the NASL was renamed to the United Soccer Association, which, again annoyingly for the sake of this video, has the acronym USA. The USA, the league, not the country, set about getting to business. Their original plan was to launch their new football league in the spring of 1968, which would give them time to do all the boring admin-y bits of forming a league, such as finding sponsors, getting TV deals in place, agreeing on corner flag designs, that kind of stuff. But it wasn't going to be that easy. The NAPSL and NSL weren't dead yet. Shortly after the USA announcement, the two rejected leagues got their together, decided that they could play along nicely after all, and merged to form the National Professional Soccer League, or NPSL. Much to everyone's surprise,
Modern NPSL.
Yeah, now we have an NPSL. Or we did? No, we still do?
Different
still
NPSL, yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Still, I mean, it's so hard to keep track sometimes. You're like, right, did that league exist? Does that league still? Okay, yeah, we still have that, but it's not the National Professional Soccer League. It's National Premier Soccer League.
Yep.
Which is still confusing.
The NPSL announced that they planned to launch the league the following year, in 1967, and, even more surprisingly, had signed a 2-year television deal with CBS. The USSFA and FIFA were stunned. They'd been completely blindsided by the renegade division and quickly moved to declare the NPSL as an outlaw league. However, the train had already left the station. NPSL was already assembling a 10-team league, throwing money at stadium owners, coaches and players alike in order to get everything ready for kickoff the following spring. The United Soccer Association knew that the tide was turning. Despite being sanctioned, its owners felt that to let the NPSL have a solo run as a division in 1967 would allow it to capture the US soccer market unchallenged. Its organisers scrambled and soon announced that they too would be launching their league.
Okay, so I want to bring in this comment from Neil. Right, this tells us what we've known: our federation is toothless and continues to be toothless. Yes, I guess, but I think you have to consider the reasons why that's the case, because that's the implication there is, well, they shouldn't be toothless, right? They should do more, or they should take more control. I guess that's the implication from the comment. Rob, would you agree with that? I mean, I can ask Neil, of course, but I'm just saying, like, what could they have done in a space as empty as American soccer in 1966? Could they have? They said, you're a renegade league, you're not allowed to do this. And what did the NPSL at the time say? We do not care. It doesn't matter. Why do we care what you say?
And then the fact that they just went off and did it anyway, and then the federation was like, "Well, you seem to be starting in a promising way, so the team, the league that I did sanction, why don't you hold off?" That's not good. That's not good leadership, or not powerful leadership either way.
I mean, it's that thing of, do we continue to say you're not sanctioned, you're a renegade league, we don't want, but again, there's not a lot of power, there's not a lot of soccer happening, they don't really have a lot of ability to say no when somebody puts money into something at a time when that was necessary to get the league started. You're kind of like, oh, okay, I guess you make the rules. How much more do you want to watch of this? Is there anything else in here that's like pertinent to what we're dealing with right now?
I guess it gets into some fun stuff about how the league that got the CBS contract was making their players take dives so they could take commercial breaks during the game and stuff like that.
Well, that's insane.
There's some interesting tidbits coming up if we want to watch like maybe another minute or so.
Oh yeah, let's watch a couple minutes more.
In 1967, in an attempt to keep pace with the NPSL. Flash forward to April 1967, And the first of the two new major leagues of football in the United States prepare to launch a new dawn for American soccer. The NPSL launched with 10 teams competing to be crowned its inaugural champions. The Atlanta Chiefs, Baltimore Bays, Chicago Spurs, Los Angeles Toros, New York Generals, Oakland Clippers, Philadelphia Spartans, Pittsburgh Phantoms, St. Louis Stars, and Toronto Falcons. Hang on a minute, Toronto. What are you doing sneaking into the US League? Never mind. Come on in and take a seat next to the rest of these degenerates. A few things to note about the NPSL. Much like the current MLS, it was split into two conferences, the easy-to-remember Eastern and Western Division, which makes sense up until the point you realise that the...
Okay, so we're learning things here, but I do want to go back to the chat, and this is from Scott. Could a renegade happen today? Could a renegade soccer league happen today? I want to say yes, but with significant caveats. Anybody can start a league, right? If there's somebody with enough money and they get a bunch of stadium leases, because you got to have places to play, they can start a league. But
is it going to be good?
What players are going to choose to play in an unsanctioned league outside of the FIFA transfer system, right? Once you do that, you risk upending your career completely, right? Unless you are getting paid so much more to play in that league and it is worth your while to take yourself out of the conventional system, I don't think so. And obviously, a league like that, they have no access to anything through U.S. soccer. They would not be in the Open Cup, such as it is. The original NESL didn't participate in the Open Cup, by the way. They chose that. They just simply didn't want to do it. So there is precedent for that. But I think the landscape is so decidedly different, and American soccer now is so connected to international football that it would be really hard for a renegade league to survive. I just don't think the quality of players would be there, is what I'm saying, Rob.
NISA might be the closest thing we got to that, but they were sanctioned for a while, but they were a little bit outside the lines. And then I think they'd run into some sort of like insurance coverage and sort of stuff like that. There'd be all sorts of like boring logistics that would stand in their way.
As of this moment, the reports are with the U.S. Soccer General Meetings happening in Atlanta that NISA is making their case. I've seen mention of that. I don't have any reports on it, but NISA was making their case to maintain their third division sanctioning because they had it pulled by U.S. Soccer because they were missing some of those things. They hadn't checked all the boxes. They didn't have the bonding. They didn't have there were lots of things going on there. So, yeah, it's an interesting video. Maybe we can come back to it at a later date because we do have some other business to get to, Rob. But there's a lot of history in American soccer that is sort of like difficult to engage with because it makes us look bad as a soccer country.
But it's so fragmented too, like with all those acronyms and like it was here for a year and gone with the year. Like when you look back at history, it's hard to look at singular things in just a year. They kind of like form in our minds in like 4, 5, 6 year periods. When something happens for like 1 year, that's like in 1 year out the other.
Yeah,
in that large like zeitgeist feeling way.
Yeah. If you learn the history of the NASL, right? Obviously, people know about Pele and the Cosmos. We're talking about 75, 76, 77, stuff like that for when they were at their heights. Warner Communications, Once in a Lifetime, Shep Messing and the whole thing, Canalia and Beckenbauer. You go back just 3 or 4 years, and the Cosmos were this rinky-dink minor league, terrible operation. They had a bunch of like American college kids who were never going to hack it at a decent professional level. So it was... the story of American soccer is a very, very wild one.
Yeah, thanks to Route None. That's a fun video if you watch it through. I mean, they literally had the original TV show Batman be a commentator. I don't know if you caught that in the video.
Was that real or was that a joke? Was that serious?
I think so, but they do note how the commentators, like the level of play was so bad that the commentators like couldn't not just drag it as they watched it. Players were encouraged to fake injuries, to get commercial breaks in, and various others. So I recommend watching that through if we don't come back to that.
I know there are some names in broadcasting that were attached to soccer at the time that you're like, really, that guy? I don't have any off the top of my head, but yeah, it's one of those. It's one of those things. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for participating in the chat, everybody. One more funny one. You're talking about the unsanctioned league. Mike Thomas throws live the soccer league. A
That'd
play
be interesting.
a play on the Saudi Gulf stuff. So thanks for tuning in. If you haven't already, we're gonna do more stuff like this as we progress down this whole memory hole, if you will. But thanks for tuning in. Subscribe. We are past 1,000, and we are adding more every single day. So be the next, and tell your friend to be the next after you to subscribe. Follow along on social media at mkickaround. Write us a note, morningkickaround@gmail.com, or support us with some cash. Ko-fi.com/morningkickaround. We're going to come right back and come back with today's hot topic on Friday's Morning Kickaround. All right, the hot topic today on Friday's episode of Morning Kickaround. Earlier in the week, we had a conversation. What teams, what clubs should populate the USL's D1 in their first year of existence? And we listed off a provisional 12 teams. And that video got a lot of reaction, a lot of comment, a lot of folks agreeing with our selections, but plenty, throwing in their 2 cents of who we might have missed, and maybe some teams that we've put in there, some folks disagreed. The MK Ultra community, thank you for chiming in a big way. Plenty to agree and disagree with us on that.
Yeah, let's so great comments, and it's still going. So if you haven't seen that video, go back and watch our picks for the first 12 D1 teams in the USL League set to launch their plan in 2026-27. I think for the purpose of this, we should review who we picked, right? We should tell people who we picked so that then they can say, well, that's wrong, right? And that's what we're going to get to with the comments from the Ultras. Louisville, Phoenix, Sacramento, Tampa, San Antonio, Indianapolis, Rhode Island, Colorado Springs, Las Vegas, Oakland, Miami, and North Carolina. That's what we came to. That was we had some vetoes in there. I think I suggested a couple, and you're like, I don't know if that's good enough. I don't know if they're strong enough. Obviously, the thing that makes this hard is that you're always kind of getting to a place where there's one thing about a club that makes it harder to put them in a lot of cases, right? It's a stadium situation. It is, again, the financial strength of the club, right? Kind of their backing. Maybe it's the size of the market, but that's not always a case, because I think we really don't have an issue with hitting the 1 million mark in enough cities. So as I was, when we get into the comments here, Rob, it is a lot about that. It's like, well, on merit, who belongs in, or why are you forgetting about this big city? But then again, it's sort of like everybody's subjective measure of what matters. So here are the Ultras comments on this video that we did with our 12. We've got right here, hard pressed not to have Union Omaha worthy as of top tier. Union Omaha is obviously done a little bit of work building their community. I love their badge. I've got a Union Omaha shirt that I wear on a regular basis on the show. Their stadium situation is still not to the level of 15,000. Maybe there's a waiver to be had there, but I don't know. Do you think, again, they're a League One club, Rob? We had no League One cities in our top 12.
Yeah, that's an interesting omission. Should we have been thinking, within existing teams at the League One level a little bit more? We did shout out Ford Madison as a possibility. They've done really well with their community building, but you said that maybe Madison doesn't ring to you like a first division.
Well, but that's the thing. Like,
market.
I get the reaction of it shouldn't matter. Like, it shouldn't matter if you have a massive market, and I don't know what Madison's population is. Although we had a very good comment, I'm not sure if I can find it, but with a very good comment from somebody who said that here it is. It's actually right here. Dave.
Well done.
It says only 9 of 12 initial clubs need to be in a metro market of 1 million or more, right? Which we did say that on the video. 75% of the 12 have to be in a market of 1 million or more per U.S. Soccer's PLS, which again, we're acknowledging that the PLS are a little mushy, a little wonky. Saying it should be noted, as written, the rule is necessarily vague, as metropolitan market isn't defined by what standard they would use to measure it. That opens up some more areas of opportunity. So after 2 years, et cetera, et cetera. So, again, is it sort of the combined statistical area as defined by the United States government? Is it some other measure of what what is the measure? That is a thing, right? So maybe, and Omaha, I believe, meets the million person criteria, the million population criteria. It's also, again, with stadiums, Jeff, Union Omaha has a stadium coming. All right. I have a cynic's view of stadium building in America on a general level
for good reason.
I mean, look, plenty of stadiums have gotten built, but a plan does not make a stadium. A plan is just a plan. A plan is cheap to put together. Words are cheap, and there are lots of hurdles that they need to get over.
But the renderings, Jason.
I love a rendering. All right. So we didn't include Pittsburgh either, right? Oh no, Pittsburgh did make it. I don't remember. Pittsburgh made it.
I know we were going back and forth on it. We got accused of utter woke nonsense for not including them, so we might have gotten bullied to putting them in. Maybe no.
We did not. We did not include Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh is an interesting one, and here the comment says Pittsburgh has 3 phases going on to expand their stadium to 15,000.
That'd be cool.
If that's true, obviously that puts Pittsburgh in a different category in terms of possibly being in that 12. And we're not bumping anybody. And again, in year 3, you're supposed to be at 14 anyway. So, that is a thing. There are also some comments in here about, stadiums need not be soccer stadiums, right? They just have to be 15,000 capacity. It's why we even considered some teams or markets, I guess, that I don't know you would immediately think of if you were just doing by market size or marketing reach, which again, as purist as soccer fans, that's not always our first concern. But I saw Birmingham mentioned.
Yeah.
What do you think about Birmingham, Robert?
Well, I mean, they do have a large stadium, and there isn't a whole lot of professional sports in that area. So I feel like if done well, I think that could be successful. I think that's definitely one worth consideration. I don't think that's like Birmingham's necessarily a city that you didn't blazon on the marquee for anything. I don't know if anyone's going to go, wow, Birmingham's got a team. But if they're good and they have a stadium that heats his standards and they're filling it up, then why not? There's not a lot of argument against it other than like the perception of what that city is. Right. But if they earned it, then why the heck not?
Yeah. Look, the fairest way. Okay. The most, I guess fairest is the only word I can think of, right? The way that connects with what we want when we think about pro rel in our country, which, again, we are kind of going on this premise that USL is going to launch a first division and they're going to connect it with the other leagues and we will have pro rel. There's no guarantee of that, but they're talking about it, right? So we're imagining, we're dreaming, we dare to dream, American soccer fans. So we're daring to dream that there will be a 12 team first division. At least, again, you have to have 12. They could do more. They could choose to do more, but you have to have 12. So let's start with that. Who are the 12? You're supposed to get to 14 in year 3. Now, what you could do, obviously, is start with 12 and then have 2 teams over the next 2 years promoted into the first division. So you reach 14 by year 3, right? That is, you are not in control of what markets you put in your division if you're worried about the commercial strength of your first division, if you're USL. So that's a thing, right? In American soccer, that's a thing. We just watched a video about the history of American soccer. It's so tied into money and capitalism and sort of being, you have to consider those things or you risk collapsing. You could do that, right? You could have teams promoted and then not have any relegation. And then once you get to 14, try to figure out what your plan is going to be. And here's something. This is from one of the comments. I'm a Brooklynite, King Coheed 1208. I'm a Brooklynite who's very excited for Brooklyn FC to play men's soccer in Brooklyn. I don't think they will be in the first 12 to 14, but I do think they will get there before 20 D1 teams, which obviously USL could try to grow to 20. I'm thinking you'll see Brooklyn there by 2032. This one's interesting to me because we don't have, as you think about it, we really don't have any markets. And New York is huge, right?
Yeah.
14 million people, should be plenty of space for this. We don't have any combined MLS USL markets. Not really. You could argue at Orange County, I guess, in California. You could toss them in there. I mean, who else am I missing? Maybe, you've got Oakland. That's up the road from San Jose. I suppose you could argue that. I guess that would be interesting to see a USL Championship team or USL Division 1 team rather, Premier or whatever, existing miles away ultimately from the Queens-based NYCFC or across the river from the Red Bulls.
This conversation has me really, really puts in perspective, like, what an interesting time. And like, it feels like we're at the start of something here. There has been a lot of work in the last 5-10 years to get, there's these teams that, there's a lot of stadium plans. And I feel like we're on the cusp of like having a real like base to work on. Like, we're shouting out a lot of exciting teams and like this team could be, but there's a lot of caveats, ifs, ands, and buts. And I was a little harsh on Detroit saying they may not be a year one D1, but with those plans in place, in 5 years, they might be a completely different club and like have a brand new soccer specific stadium and, be a shoe-in to be a division. And there's so many different teams that are like, well, if this one other thing is added, then they're legit and this and that. And it just seems like by the time we get to that World Cup 2032 that the Brooklyn I mentioned, this whole landscape could be completely different, but like we've seen in the past, like the video we watched in the previous segment about, competing leagues, burning each other out and falling apart. Like, I feel like we're at some sort of a tipping point. Like, are we going to spill over and actually have this groundwork and this foundation for a structure? Or does, a big ruling or the sanctioning not happen or something like, or these stadium plans don't come to fruition? And this kind of fizzles out. I feel like we're at a very unique time, an exciting time. There's a lot to hypothesize about in this moment, but we'll see where we are in like 4 years. This landscape, is in the midst of a very, I don't know if it's a delicate situation, but definitely we're on the edge of something here.
Yeah, I mean, you get into you kind of get into a place where you start talking about individual teams and their viability, sort of individual viability. But as a league, if there are enough teams, I mean, you could imagine some teams might struggle a bit. But what you hope for, what we want to get to, is that when teams struggle, they don't die.
Yeah.
Right. When teams struggle, maybe that means, I mean, in a fair, in a fair sporting merit way, that would mean relegation if you're struggling. And then maybe that doesn't necessarily mean you die if that league is strong enough, if you're still, revenue streams are still there. Again, I think this is untested in the way that it is untested. Like, clearly it's untested that if a team goes down, what happens next? What happens to their fan base? What happens to the interest in town? What happens to the money? What happens to the interest on the ownership's part? Right now, again, let me tie us back to a conversation we had last week and a video you can watch, which is our conversation with Peter Wilt. And Peter Wilt advocates for community ownership, not just because it'd be nice and it's romantic, but because that would be a guard against a club collapsing because the millionaire, who's the major backer per PLS, is the guy who gets to decide whether the woman gets to decide whether the club exists or not anymore. Oh, it's just a bad business. I'm pulling out. Oh, there's no more money. Shut it down. Like, now we've got a dead club that we add to the graveyard when nobody wants that. Obviously there will always be financial pressures, even with community ownership. But if you have community ownership, there's a chance that you'll be able to kind of ride those waves because now you don't have a straight up businessman just making a business decision without having a connection to the club and the market. So that's what I'm hoping. And so, USL is proposing an idea that is untested, and it gets into this thing about, okay, on the top, and it's very easy to imagine populating a 12-team league, a 14-team league, a 20-team league even, if you throw Detroit and Brooklyn and some of these other markets in there. But it's the bottom end, and then what happens next, those clubs, and sort of what does it look like to be a championship team when there's a division above you? Or what does it look like to be a League One team when there are two divisions above you? Or you've been a championship team and now you're a League One team. Those things are completely untested.
Yeah, American soccer trying to build the down. They built top down, and we're in the age where that bottom definitely needs to get built up. Working backwards here, in American soccer. We shall see. There's a brief idea that I wanted to just float out there. We can come back to it another time. But with some teams being way ahead of each other, maybe if a lower league team earns a promotion, maybe they can kind of like have that promotion credit for a couple years until they raise their levels and maybe get the stadiums and stuff in general. So that could get messy, but maybe something like a promotion credit, if they like earn it on the field, maybe they can have like a 3 to 5 year window to get their PLS stuff in order and then accept that promotion.
That's interesting. I mean, obviously that doesn't, it gets real wonky scheduling, all that stuff, trying to be, but there does need to be we have to be creative, and these leagues need to be creative. These businesses, right? Because that's what ultimately we're talking about, need to be creative in the way that they try. I mean, look, in England, what do we talk about all the time when a team goes down? There's a parachute payment, right? You get a payment that helps you absorb the damage done to your bottom line. And, that sometimes results in yo-yo clubs, and I don't love that, but that's still better than the idea that, especially here, a club drops down, revenue craters for whatever reason, right? It may not be attendance. There are some people in the chat that are saying attendance probably wouldn't be all that affected, right? Now, in this case, what Ewan is saying is that if you go up to D1 when you've been a championship side, if you go back to the championship, okay, whatever, we were already there, who really cares? But there may be some teams, or if you are truly doing pro rel through 3 divisions, teams that go from the championship to League One who really do have problems. And this is it, right? Revenue sharing across all 3 pro divisions. Now, revenue sharing is a double-edged sword in the sense that, yes, it can help save some teams, maybe prevent clubs from having to shut down. It softens a blow, but there will be owners who see that as a get-out-of-jail-free card, right? And basically say, well, why do I need to put a lot of money into this to try to go up? Why do I need to be ambitious? Especially when the margins are thin and it's hard to prove that just because you start winning or win a title or move up, you're going to make more money or grow. And again, some of this is, are the owners in it to make money? Are they in it for the real estate play? Are they in it to just run a soccer club, be connected to the community, and do it like we want them to do it?
Thank you, MK Ultras, for contributing to this conversation. We're at a truly interesting time in our game, in our country, so we'll keep that going, and thanks for contributing to the conversation. If you haven't already, Morning Kickaround on the YouTube, be the very next subscriber. We'll have to do something fun to celebrate us reaching that goal. We'll come back next week with something fun. We're going to post the poll for the naming of the Morning Kickaround Rooster. Which one of your the selections is your favorite? Pekshay, David Peckham, Marco Rooster, or Franz Peckenpower? Have your say. And we'll come back to that next week and see who the Morning Kickaround Rooster will be. All right, thanks for tuning in. We will see you on Monday. Until then, everybody, please enjoy your soccer.